Hey everyone, my name is Rooster and welcome back to Mechabellum. Today's video is something I've been wanting to do for a while, and it involves creating a sort of guide for different comps, different units, showing you guys how to play it, when to play it, what to look out for, what it's good against, but also what it's bad against, and then show you guys a replay that kind of showcases what I've been talking about, or like how to apply what I've just taught you. Today, and with the start of this potential series, is the ARCLIGHT. I think many of us enjoy carry ARCLIGHTs. We love the idea of it, but sometimes it can be a bit hard to pull off, and especially in recent patches, it hasn't been great. But I think with the last patch, which was 7.40, the ARCLIGHTs kind of are making a resurgence. Reason for this is that I believe that sledges and melters are strong again, and carry ARCLIGHTs do very well into sledges if you can get them to a point where they have some levels, and ideally they have at least 2 techs or even 3 techs, and with that I'm talking about range and charge shot, and ideally even something like elite marksman. But how do you get there? That's often the issue, right? So first, let's go through my techs. I think these are the standard carry techs. I have obviously range, charge shot, elite marksman. These are mandatory if you want to play carry, in my opinion. And then I decide to go for anti-aircraft ammunition, mainly because late game, if I mostly focused on ARCLIGHTs and didn't get any anti-air, I don't want to have to then deal with some kind of massive transition to air units and have my ARCLIGHTs, which I've invested a lot into, be completely useless. So here, that's what I like to take, just so I'm able to tech that potentially and just say, well, I had the carry ARCLIGHTs anyway, now they can also shoot air and I should be good. You can potentially take electromagnetic shot because it's good into things like, let's say, the assault marksman, and even can be very good into things like teched giants, forts, melters, and even into War Factory. I think that electromagnetic shot ARCLIGHTs are a lot better actually than obviously the anti-aircraft ammunition ARCLIGHTs. But yeah, I only have 4 slots, and this is what I'm currently playing. With that being said, I made a pro and cons list, a strength and weaknesses list. Let's pull that up right now before we get into the game and kind of explain what I think is good about ARCLIGHTs, what can make them work, and when you probably have to look towards a different comp rather than trying to force ARCLIGHTs because you probably will run into some issues. So, the carry ARCLIGHTs, their strength is that they are great late game carries with very little counterplay. The flip side to that is that they kind of need to snowball to get through the early rounds. What I mean by this is that carry ARCLIGHTs only really become carry when they have charge shot at the bare minimum, and usually they will need range as well to be able to leverage that additional damage. Without these techs, they will struggle a lot against things like steel ball still, against sledges especially, and never mind the things like the very big and tanky units, the fortresses. Even Vulcans can be an issue, Scorpions can be an issue. Obviously, if the opponent like drops a very early War Factory, you'll get into some trouble. So those are kind of the big counters and things you have to look out for. I also have it in the list there, so it's weak against early giants, and air units are in that list as well, because obviously, even though you do run the air tech, it's something you only really want to click as like your 3rd tech and even your 4th. So if your opponent is very heavy into air units, carry ARCLIGHTs will probably not be the thing to go for. What else is it weak against? It's weak against shielded fangs, but early fangs are not necessarily a deterrent, because only shielded fangs become an issue. So in the early rounds, because shielded fangs are so expensive, usually you don't really have to worry about that too much, and ARCLIGHTs will still do very well clearing normal fangs because they're just chaff, so they will one-shot them and clear them quite efficiently. But late game, if your opponent has a lot of fangs and does tech it, you kind of need to build something that will help your ARCLIGHTs get to the carries, because at that stage they will do big damage against big targets as well. Usually this will look something like, for instance, Mustangs, as I will show you in the game that I'm going to play. What else? Obviously, yes, so it needs 2 to 3 tech upgrades. That's expensive, so it needs to get off the ground in the early levels. It also needs levels, so usually you want to have them level 2, even level 3, because then Elite Marksman becomes a great tech. So early rounds, you generally want to have something that makes them level, and at least makes you go toe-to-toe with your opponent, and doesn't leave you just losing games without killing your opponent's board at all. And what helps with this is, of course, things like early crawlers. Early Mustangs especially are so good for Arclights because they will chew through them even if they just have range. And Mustangs are worth quite a bit of EXP, so your Arclights will usually level almost every single round, which is lovely. That's all you need in the early rounds. Early Steel Balls, actually, and even early tanks are also good for Arclights, but remember that in that situation, you kind of will need early Charge Shot to deal enough DPS and deal with those tankier units. But they are very good. Again, they also give good EXP, and eventually carry Arclights will completely demolish them. And this is also why I say that it's best on aggro to play carry Arclights, because this limits early range or tech problems. What I'm referring to here is the fact that if you play aggro, you're already close to your opponent anyway. And so often you will not even need to go for range as your first tech. Obviously, if you're up against crawlers like small things, even Fangs and Mustangs, you can get away with checking range first. But sometimes you can just get away with taking Charge Shot first if you're up against a bunch of sledges, especially if you're on the line and your opponent is also on the line. Then Charge Shot becomes really, really nice, and it just makes it so much easier for you because you don't need to go through, oh, I need range, but I also need Charge Shot. Aggro will usually allow you to kind of have an easier time transitioning into that mid game where you have enough money to finally get both the range and the damage on your Arclights. And then finally, I say it synergizes well with Elite Spec. Again, levels are fantastic for Arclights, and Elite Spec is a specialist that struggles a lot buying expensive units because obviously there's the additional cost of the level. So cheap units are great for Elite Spec, and carry Arclights are cheap, so you can buy them early and you can kind of establish your board as you would like to do. One final thing, I think I mentioned, yes, so Arclights do tend to lose to Carry Marksman stylistically. That's mostly because Carry Marksman will outrange them. And so even though the Carry Arclights can one-shot them, so can the Marksman, and if they have good enough chaff clear, they should be able to win that. But again, if you play aggro, you kind of give yourself even footing, or even an advantage, because obviously your Arclights can clear chaff as well, which the Marksman can't. And then because you're closer to your opponent, usually you won't really notice the difference in range, because your Arclights will eventually be able to shoot like almost close to the tower anyway if they're close to the line. So, that's all I wanted to go through. Enough chit-chat. Let's get into the game and show you guys a game where I play Elite Spec and show you kind of my progression and yeah, like how to apply all of these tips and takeaways that I just gave you. So see you there. And here we are. So I'll be playing a game against a Platypus Plumber, and let's have a quick look at the starting packs. So right here, I think Supply Spec Arclight Storm is okay, but again, starting no chaff isn't fantastic. Aerial Spec is also decent, but I like playing aggro, so I don't necessarily always enjoy playing these Crawler Stormcaller openings. And I see that the Crawler Phoenix pack is the strongest pack statistically. And I think, you know what? Starting with some chaff on Elite with this pack, I'll probably be able to get some early rounds. And it's an interesting specialist to play. I don't play it often. I think this pack could make it possible to play it. My opponent is a Marksman spec. Picked up the Fang, the Sledges, and the Marksman. Very strong opener, but at least I got the Crawlers into the Marksman and into the Fangs, which is nice. And here I'll just be looking to get myself some early Arclights. The benefit is that they'll be level 2 Arclights, so already they'll be dealing good damage against the Sledges. And as I said, I will have to be a bit careful against the Fangs because my opponent has got a lot of them already. And again, shielded Fangs can be a problem, but early on, not so much of a concern. As well, they don't have the shields, and they're just chaff units that my Arclights will clear rather quickly. So here you see me positioned aggressively. I picked this setup from the recommended ones. I don't do this very often, but I really should have looked at it, because I only noticed later on that my Arclights are pretty much on the line. I probably would have liked having them like 1 or 2 squares further back, more so like towards the end or like in between these crawler packs, but oh well. They're at least leveled Arclights, so they can't really be missiled to death, which might actually pay off. And the good thing here is that they are actually able to immediately start firing and get some good value. Crawlers are getting in. My opponent invested into another marksman. They might have been better off buying perhaps an Arclight, but maybe they just want to go for more sledges eventually, and they didn't really want to invest in that. But I think an early Arclight could have helped them quite massively, and also would have enabled that orange man a bit more. So great first round. I mean, look at this. My Arclights are both still alive. My Phoenixes all survived. We get the tower. We get all their units. I don't know. I think one of the Phoenixes killed the marksman, so got some good EXP there as well. And now we just wait for all my units to clear the opponent fangs, which are on the other side, and try to go for my tower. A nice first round, but right now with the lead, you do expect it to go this way, especially when you do play aggro. You're supposed to get an early lead, and the early level 2 Arclights are very strong. Okay, so Wasp Swarm shows up. I need to watch out always here on round 2 with these types of actives, also with the underground threat, because obviously my towers are fully open, and yeah, like I have to make sure that I don't lose a round here with my towers going down, so I kind of need to be aware of the possibility for that. So I think I probably pick up the Wasp Swarm. The other 2 modules are great though. Opponent could take something like Portable Shield or even Haste module and throw it on a sledge. It's good early, but I'm not too concerned about that in the long run. I'm more concerned about the short term here. I don't want to lose a round, and I want to stay and keep the tempo that I have currently. So because of that, I pick up my own Wasp Swarm. And I was going to say, I think maybe I use it defensively, but actually I go offensively here, thinking that I might be able to get this tower first. I also go for the jump drive, which I have on my Phoenixes, and throw them on a flank, seeing that this is entirely open. Opponent does pick the Wasp Swarm, and throws it onto my board, but doesn't throw it all the way in the back. Okay, so I do defend the towers here, are level 1, which is enough against Wasp Swarm to stall them for a long time. And I put a missile on the other. The Wasp Swarm is one of those actives, unlike the underground threat, which can be missiled because all the wasps spawn at the same time. And so decent defense here, and just trying to make sure that I can get that tower. Now he did level it. And he also put a missile there. So getting this tower will take quite some time. And the early sledges are definitely tanky. This is what I was talking about early. Like, even though the carry Arclights are great once they get some levels, early tanks are hard to deal with without any like damage tech upgrades. But we're doing quite well for ourselves here. Arclights were able to farm a bunch. We did get the tower eventually, and even though it looks like we might... actually, we might win this. We take out the last wasps, so we actually do win the round. There's a couple fangs that need to be dealt with, but we do it successfully. And here we clean up the final pack of sledges. Overall, I think that's a great round for me. Again, I need to kind of get through these early rounds here and get my deployments up. It's one of those things with Arclights and an elite spec where the longer the game goes, or the better you do early on, the better of a spot you'll be in, because you get money and finally you're not so strung out for resources. And also you can get more Arclights, which is kind of what you want, right? So intensive training shows up, quite a good item. I'm not too fond of missile strike because it's not good into any of these units really. But instead, I pick up the improved firepower control system. And this is again something I was mentioning, right? I see my opponent has got a lot of fangs, and I'm a bit scared about that. Even though I think the ARCLIGHTs can do a great job here, and I kind of need to go for something like carry ARCLIGHTs because I'm elite spec. I like to pick up the Mustangs here, seeing the improved firepower control system as a backup carry, and also as something that can help getting through those fangs once they do get a shield, so that the ARCLIGHTs are enabled. So very powerful round for me right here. Opponent's still choosing what to take. Does go for the improved firepower control system as well. And oh, so they unlock the Mustangs too. This is actually quite good for me because, as I said, ARCLIGHTs love fighting up against Mustangs. Even though the improved firepower control system is a bit scary, the leveled ARCLIGHTs, if they can get to them, will have no issue at all. I'm killing those. And so here you see me, by the way, positioned on the left side. I'm keeping my opponent on his toes, moving out of that flank and trying to get the most out of these Phoenixes. I could level them or sell them at some point. I haven't been too disappointed with them just yet. But right now, kind of focusing my attention on being able to level these ARCLIGHTs. So here, as you can see, my ARCLIGHTs were kind of getting stuck on those sledges because they don't have the damage upgrade yet. And so I was already thinking, okay, round 4, I have got 800 cash. I need to get an upgrade probably on my ARCLIGHTs. Or alternatively, get maybe some range on the Mustangs. But here, looks like another good round for me. I do still have one ARCLIGHT, but it's very low hit points. So not sure how much it'll be able to do. This is a leveled tower, by the way, so I don't think these Mustangs will be able to take it down. But let's have a look. Oh, maybe just about. Maybe just about. Okay, they are just about able to, but it looks like my Phoenixes will clean them up. Yes, but a close round yet again. Ooh, barrier shows up, but also tech spec, and I was really happy to see this because I hadn't teched much yet, and ARCLIGHTs kind of will need triple upgrades, if not 4 upgrades, and the Mustangs will also need at least the range. So seeing the tech upgrade, I was like, well, I know that I'm going to get at least 3 tech upgrades, which is the break-off point where tech specialist becomes worth it. So I'm happy to take that. My opponent goes for the incendiary, however. Scary stuff, especially with these Mustangs, and as I said, I do pick up an upgrade here, going for the range instead, making sure that these ARCLIGHTs can immediately fire at the opponents. And with the level 1 sledges, I wasn't too afraid yet I wouldn't have enough damage. I also pick up another pack of Mustangs, because I really do want to have at least 3 packs here, eventually with range, on the left, in the middle, and here on the right, to be able to help out with those fangs, which I do expect to be shielded at some point. I picked up some crawlers over here to be able to tank any like missiles, because obviously my opponent could have put a missile over here and like hit the pack of Mustangs, which I didn't want. I'd rather have had, by the way, fangs. I think fangs are maybe slightly better, especially on aggro, because obviously you can get missiled out and lose all of your chaff. But in the early game so far, it's kind of worked out, and because my opponent is going so heavily for Mustangs, crawlers actually become probably the more valuable chaff. Now this is going to hurt a lot. Great active there from my opponent. Just toasting all of my level 2 Mustangs. I mean, that is painful. Also deciding to shield. This is not a good round for me at all, but luckily I've managed to win the previous 3 rounds. And so I had enough tempo to be able to lose a round like this. Even though I do lose 1300 hit points almost, which is a lot. Ranged specialist shows up. Probably a must pick. Yeah, I do pick it up. There's a world where I could have skipped it. But here I thought, you know what, I'm in an okay spot. Let me just get that real quick. I'm building this early setup here. What I've been talking about, going for more Mustangs, finally giving them some range as well, enabling that improved firepower control system. And now I'm pretty happy about my setup. I can probably start buying more ARCLIGHTs. I'd like to have some chaff over here. Maybe eventually some chaff in the middle, but on elite spec you don't really like buying chaff all that much because they're level 2, so they feed EXP and they're expensive. I did expect my opponent to potentially flank me, so I did have that missile there on the left. And looks like it will pay off. 3 crawlers do survive, but shouldn't be too much of an issue right now, even though it's a level 1 tower. Fight should be over by the time that goes down, if it goes down at all. ARCLIGHTs are certainly having a better time still, but you can see what I was talking about, where if they had charge shot here, they would be much, much happier. And that's what I'm looking for to get now as we enter round number 6. Getting some additional damage with the charge shot, boosting the attack by 200%. Also, my ARCLIGHTs finally did get some levels. And here you see the fortresses by my opponent, but I think this is a bit too late. 1 or 2 rounds earlier would have been fine, but now I tech charge shot at the perfect moment where fortresses likely aren't going to be that scary anymore. ARCLIGHTs actually do deal with fortresses quite well, but they just need to have at least these 2 techs, which is usually what holds them back against early forts, especially if the opponent is something like Giant Spec. But here, round 6, I think it's a bit too late. And I might again have very, very good timing with that second upgrade. Wasp Swarm is back off cooldown. I decided to put it with the rest of my army because, well, I can't really throw it in his backline with all those Mustangs. They'll just die instantly. So instead, just going for some late chaff. My opponent also going for the Sticky Oil Bomb. I don't really know why he picked this. Doesn't have any fire on the ground. Maybe that's something that he wants to get next round. But right now, slowing my units down doesn't really hurt me all that much. They all have enough range to be able to shoot all these targets anyway. Let's see how this works out, though. Also, this pack of Mustangs now level 3. Same for my opponent, though. I could have probably sold my Phoenixes, but they're doing quite well, so I like to just keep them around. If they were completely useless, I might have sold them, but now with the fortresses out, you know, they just deal good DPS. They're a nuisance, and they're sort of a safety in case my opponent did go for more air units. Left tower goes down, and as you see, we did clear those forts quite rapidly. ARCLIGHT here getting a level. This one also almost leveling, and the Mustangs are doing great for themselves. Although my opponent's Mustangs are also leveling now. Scary stuff. Scary stuff. But so are mine. Okay, so we're still keeping up with the level 4 Mustangs on both sides, which is a saving grace, and that ARCLIGHT also able to level. This is fantastic for me. Great spot to be in. Haste module is nice. Especially on something like these Mustangs I have. My opponent actually goes for the Lightning Storm, which is a very big investment, but it is round 7 after all. Did I skip? No. I took the haste module. There it is. And I decided to go for immediate elite marksman on those ARCLIGHTs. I do have the stack specialist. I had the money. Now I'm in the spot where I just have so much cash every round, because all I really want to buy is these cheap ARCLIGHTs, which only cost 150 on the elite spec. No need to get that elite recruitment from the left tower. And with so much cash, getting those upgrades, just great. Look at all these ARCLIGHTs. Level 3, most of them. Soon to be level 4, perhaps. But my opponent here does go for the Wasp Swarm. I have been kind of ignoring this side a little bit, just putting a missile there because I didn't really want to deal with it. It's probably a bit lazy for me, and I should be looking to perhaps get some more Mustangs in the back. They'll always do very well with chaff clear, and on level 2 with range, they can deal with any air unit pretty much as well. The storm on the left kind of hurts me, but still, I mean, look at these arcs. People tend to forget how tanky ARCLIGHTs are when they level. Like, this is a pretty tanky unit. It's got almost 12,000 hit points. So it'll be able to take some hits. And for an active there, that cost, I believe, 400. If you count not skipping. That's an amazing round for me. I might even be able to just win this outright. I mean, look at all these Mustangs. They're getting heavily... Okay, I wanted to say they're getting heavily outranged, but they're not. I think my opponent got the... Oh no, it's the ranged spec right now. Okay, well, it's almost a tie. Only one Mustang surviving with the storm there. I'm happy with that. Giant Hunter shows up. That is lovely for me, and I do pick it up here. My opponent already had the triple forts, and with the barrier, it's hard for them to sell out of it. Also, they're not a giant spec, so they already had to unlock the unit for 200. So this should just help me seal the game the longer this goes. I've been able to kill all the fortresses as well up to now, so I should be able to get that money back in no time. By the way, on carry ARCLIGHTs, cards that you'd be really happy to see is things like Junior Spec, especially Deployment Spec, because again, in these late rounds, your main problem is not having cash. Your main problem is having too much cash and only limited deployments. So Deployment Spec is always great to pick up. I don't have it here though. Things like, of course, the ARCLIGHT cards for the carry ARCLIGHTs are fantastic. Sub ARCLIGHTs are great. You just get even more cash to spend on their upgrades. Things like Intelligent ARCLIGHT to get some early levels. Heavy ARCLIGHT is also a great card, especially on aggro, but it's a bit more situational. But it would do decently in this spot. It can certainly help out too if your opponent has a couple Phoenixes and you don't have anything yet to deal with the air units. At least the ARCLIGHTs will be able to deal with the ground units and tank some shots from the Phoenixes. So I do like put 4 shields down. I have the money. Again, my opponent went for the Vulcan drop, but finally I leveled that tower and I did put, as I said, some Mustangs back there. Not willing to lose any more rounds to cheeky flanks. And yeah, even though the Vulcan does kill those Stangs, it gets stuck on the tower and I get a huge round. As we now enter round number 9 with my opponent down to 1250 hit points. And at this stage, I just know I'm going to win. I just know I'm going to win. There's nothing my opponent can do here to actually win. The best thing that they could do, maybe, is get a War Factory. But even that at this stage doesn't matter anymore. These ARCLIGHTs are pumping out so much damage. Level 4, level 5 over here. 177 range, 185 even. And that's without the tower buff. They're just going to crush anything in their sights. And that is the point where you want to get with carry ARCLIGHTs because you just know that you're going to win. For the opponent, they just need to shut this down early. They need to make sure that the ARCLIGHTs don't get levels, that they get stuck on heavy units, and then you just buy even more heavy units. So they weren't able to get through them before. Even if they can get a bit stronger and get through one, you've added 2 more, and then, well, problems pile up and up. But yeah, here it's too strong for the board that he went for. He also didn't go for more Fangs, by the way, but that's probably because I went for these Mustangs, so it deterred him from going for that. The EMP showed up, and I'm able to hit all of these shields, which is lovely. Of course, my opponent also picks it up. I think they should have positioned it more on this side, because it would have been able to hit every single shield, actually, I believe. Would have got a much more value. He probably knows that I'm going to shield, so that would have been better to go for. But yeah, I have so much money, I'm able to now finally loan, get the range. I also got the tower upgrades, which by the way, can now be leveled twice. So you can no longer just get 1 attack or defense upgrade. You have access to a second one, which costs 300 and gives double of what the initial one gave. So the attack gives 10% bonus the first time for 100, and then the second time it adds another 20% on top of that with for 300. But I mean, that's just game. That is just game. And so this is... I've had quite a few games go like this, and it just feels great. If you're able to just get through those early levels, not lose too hard, at least try and like go even. So like make the rounds very close, kill almost all of their units, at least get the XP, level some ARCLIGHT, set up your board, be comfortable. It just feels really good. Carry ARCLIGHT is just really one of those like late game powerhouses where they don't really care much about anything. Even though my opponent here went for the rocket punches, that didn't do anything. They got absolutely demolished by these units. And I mean, look at their damage, right? This guy, top damage, 250k, 140k. I mean, all of them are just absolutely crushing. And yeah, I mean, obviously my Mustangs were doing great as well, as they do when they have levels on them. This level 5 back with the improved, an absolute menace. But yeah, this was a cool game. I really enjoyed playing carry arcs. I'm not a big giant player, so I like having like all of these small units just completely crush. And yeah, I hope that you guys enjoyed this. I hope that it was somewhat informative. If you did, please leave a like. Follow the channel if you want to stay up to date with all my latest content. Go and check me out on Twitch if you want to see me play live. If there's anything else that I left out or that you're curious about, feel free to ask me in the comments. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.